Hey everybody, Dave here with another edition of Should You Play, my series where I look at a tabletop game that you might not be familiar with using 5 different categories so you can see if it's something that might be worth checking out more for yourself. And today we're going to be looking at Marching Order. Marching Order is a game that's been around for a couple of years now, but the exciting thing is that they are kicking off a brand new Kickstarter for a brand new edition of the game. So I will include a link to that Kickstarter in the description of this video if you want to check that out. But it's important that you understand that what I'm actually reviewing today is going to be the Mud and Blood edition, which is the older version. It's the current version that's currently available on their website for purchase. And the Kickstarter is for a brand new edition of the game called Curse and Coin. So if you're interested in the Curse and Coin edition, I will be sharing some information about that towards the end of this video. And they did send me a preview copy of one of the several books that are included in that set. So I'll be able to give you a little bit of a preview of that Curse and Coin edition. But again, just keep in mind that the version that they sent me for review and promotional purposes is the current Mud and Blood edition. So that's what I'm going to be talking about primarily. So again, there are 5 categories that we're going to go through to look at this game. Those are the pitch, genre and setting, core mechanics, character creation and advancement, and then finally price and availability. And just a quick content warning before we get into this. The language and the humor that is used in the Marching Order game doesn't really fit the kind of family style environment I usually keep here on this channel. So just FYI, there's potential for exposure to some language that might be a little saltier than you're used to. So if you're a parent, if you're watching with kids or whatever, take that into consideration before you continue on. But let's do that. Let's dive in and talk a little bit about Marching Order. Marching Order is a rules light dungeon crawler that is designed for either solo play or cooperatively up to 4 players. And I would let you know up front, I've only had an opportunity to play this solo. So all of my perspective is going to be coming from that. I have not enjoyed an opportunity to play this in co-op yet, but it does support co-op for up to 4 players, and also is heavily designed also, I believe, with the solo player in mind. Being that it is a solo fantasy dungeon crawl that's team-based, is probably going to draw some comparisons to 4 Against Darkness, another game I have looked at on this channel. So I will also make sure I include a link to that game if you want to check that video as well. So yes, it's going to draw comparisons to 4 Against Darkness, but I think the one area that Marching Order really separates itself from not only 4 Against Darkness, but other games, is the Marching Order. It's not just a title. The Marching Order is the way that the mechanics are framed within this game. Sort of like an old school turn-based RPG. You're going to have all of your characters on the left side of the table, or the left side of the screen, so to speak, and all of your enemies lined up on the other side, and that forms a marching order where a lot of the rules and mechanics interact. So let's talk about the genre and the setting of Marching Order. Marching Order takes place in a low fantasy world, and specifically in a town called Rot Bottom. And Rot Bottom is pretty much what you envision when you hear that name. It is a hive of scum and villainy. This is not a setting or story for paladins and knights and righteous champions who are going to slay the dragon and rescue the princess and all those other typical higher fantasy tropes. In this game, you are playing rogues. Rogue is not a character class. Rogue is the label that is applied to each of the 4 characters in your party. They're not adventurers, they're not heroes, they're rogues. And again, that really frames what the setting is like. This is a game where you're delving into dungeons to get coin so that you can go back to town and spend that coin on gambling and carousing and also buying more gear for your next delve and improving your character and all that other typical stuff. But this is a lower fantasy world with your characters framed not as heroic adventurers, but as rogues who are really just trying to get that coin. So next, let's talk about the core mechanics, and there's a couple of mechanics that are worth mentioning. The first is the dice mechanic is very simple, rules light and easy. I believe the D6 is the only die that is used, and pretty much anytime you make a check, whether it is to attack somebody or a skill check or ability check of sorts, it's just a straight up 1d6, add a static modifier, compare it to a target number, and you're good to go. If you meet the target number or exceed it, you succeed. If you do not meet or exceed that target number, you fail. And then there's also the mechanic I mentioned before about the marching order, where the game comes with a series of cards. And those cards are lined up on your table, and between the rogues and the enemies is an imaginary line called the battle line. So on the left-hand side, you have your rogues. Those are the characters you control. That's your party. The rightmost rogue is at the front of the marching order, and the leftmost enemy is at the front of their order. And so the rightmost rogue is adjacent to the leftmost enemy. And the Mud and Blood edition, which again is the one that we're looking at here, does come with cards for all of the rogues and all of the enemies you will face in the adventures that are included in that set. Combat itself plays out over a number of phases. The first of those is conditions and cooldowns, and then action phase, and then the bullshit phase. And the bullshit phase is kind of in addition to the marching order mechanic, the bullshit phase is kind of the other mechanic that marching order that kind of hangs its hat on as their special mechanic that separates them from the other options out there for solo or cooperative tabletop dungeon crawls. So first, in the conditions and cooldown phase, you are going to manage all conditions that are currently applied to your rogues, and then you're going to lower their cooldown ratings by 1. So for example, say the doctor is suffering the on fire condition with a cooldown timer of 2, noted by the die next to that entry on their character sheet. During the conditions and cooldown phase, they would suffer the effects of the on fire condition, causing them to lose a half die of damage, meaning 1d6 divided in half and rounded up, and then would decrease the cooldown timer from 2 to 1. Once the timer reaches 0, the condition is removed. And in the action area, we see this doctor has another cooldown timer for their Let Me Patch You Up ability, and that would move from 3 to 2. Once that timer reaches 0, it is removed, and the good doctor can use that action again. Then, during the action phase, each rogue can perform one action that can either come from the options listed on their character sheet or from a list of general actions that are available to everyone, like attempting an escape or swapping places with an adjacent character in the marching order. But most of the time during combat, the rogues will be using one of the actions found on their character sheets, such as the action titled "Your Teeth Are in My Shield" from the Knight character that lets them shield bash an enemy followed by a longsword attack. Incidentally, the 2 in the box to the left of that action on the character sheet means that's the starting cooldown. So after the knight uses this action, they would just add a d6 with the 2 showing up on that spot of their character sheet to track their cooldowns for that action. After each rogue performs one action, then we get into the bullshit phase. Each rogue has room on their character sheet for 6 traits, and these 6 traits correspond to a different number of the die that is rolled during the bullshit phase, also known as the bullshit die. Although there are 6 spaces for 6 traits of bullshit on each rogue's character sheet, when you are creating a rogue, you only start with 2 of those taken. They will only have a bullshit trait for 1 and a bullshit trait for 6, meaning when it comes time for the bullshit phase and you roll 1d6 to determine what bullshit happens to this particular rogue, If they roll a 2 through a 5, nothing happens because they'll have blank spots on those traits. However, if they roll a 1 or a 6, they are going to have to resolve whatever bullshit is written into those spots. So, for example, this thief has, "Damn, it's dark, I thought you was a monster," in the 1 spot, and "The shadows is like me home" on the 6 spot. During the bullshit phase, each round, if this thief rolls a 1, then they trigger "Damn, it's dark" and attacks a random adjacent ally. And if they roll a 6 during the bullshit phase, they trigger "The shadows is like me home" and they gain the hidden condition for 2 rounds. And again, if they roll 2 through 5, nothing happens because there are currently no traits in those areas. But as they continue to adventure, this rogue could gain and lose bullshit entries. So although this thief only triggers a trait on a 1 or a 6 now, that could change, or very likely will change, in the future as they continue adventuring. So that's how your rogues function in combat, but your enemies are just a tiny bit different. On each of their turns, the enemy rolls a die to randomly determine what they do. Using the giant rat as an example, on a 1 through 3, the rat attacks an adjacent rogue if they can, and swap places in their order to move 1 space closer if they cannot. And on a 4 through 6, the rat swaps places with a random ally, being any of the other enemies included in the fight. And just like rogues, the enemies each have a bullshit phase as well, and they must roll a d6 to determine what happens. And so with this giant rat, if they roll a 1, they instantly die, and on a 6, they attack a random rogue. As far as the actual adventuring goes, Marching Order uses a system that's similar to a Choose Your Own Adventure. The Mud and Blood set, which again is the version that's currently available on their website, comes with 4 pre-made adventures, and there are, I think, 7 more that are available for purchase in addition to the 4 that come in the basic set. But that's the way the game is played. You select an adventure, and each of those basically is a different dungeon for you to delve into, and you just kind of follow the course as if it's a choose your own adventure. Each location will tell you what happens, a description of the room, what enemies are found there, and other things you can do, like using certain skills. And if you have a rope, you might be able to use it in a certain way, and it's pretty much familiar territory, but it is all prescribed. In the Mud and Blood edition, there is no random generator. All gameplay is designed to come from a prescribed adventure, such as the 4 that are included in the base set, and the 7, I think, other ones you can buy in addition. And then when you're not in a dungeon, you're not adventuring, and you go back to Rotbottom to spend your coin that you've earned, there's a number of different ways you can do that. There's the traditional ways of spending that coin to buy more gear, more potions, rope, tools for picking locks, and so forth. And you can also spend it on some other things, such as maybe you want to go partying, you want to go carousing. There's a carousing table where all kinds of different hijinks and potential bullshit can be found in the carousing tables. There's also, I believe, 3 different gambling games that you can engage with as well to try to gamble your way to fame and fortune. So next, let's talk about character creation and advancement. And this is a very light area as well. Character creation is pretty simple. At the start of your game, you are presented a number of coins that you use to purchase your rogues. Not all the rogues are built the same. They each have a different price that is listed on their character sheets, with some being as cheap as 100 coins and some costing 250 coins. And there's also a torchbearer that is free, but you can only have 1 torchbearer in your party at a time. So you might want to spend your coin on buying 3 rogues and having the torchbearer. That's another option as well. So as far as character creation, once you have your party of those rogues, all you have to do to finish character creation is to determine your quality and your flaw, which are the first 2 items of bullshit. Each character sheet shows on the right-hand side a table, And so when you create the character, you would roll 1d6 and compare to the qualities area, and that quality would be added as the number 6 trait on the bullshit die. And then you would roll under the flaws table as well, and that randomly determined flaw would become the number 1 of the bullshit die as well. So that's all there is for character creation. You spend your starting budget on your rogues, you roll twice to determine the 1 and 6 on the bullshit table, and that's all there is to it, aside from also spending some of that budget to purchase torches and other gear you're going to need. Character advancement is also very, very simple and easy, and that is just simply you spend your coin. So when you complete a delve into a dungeon, you return back to Rot Bottom, you can spend some of that coin on improving your character. And that improvement primarily comes from either spending 50 coins to unlock one of the actions you don't have. At the beginning of the game, each rogue has only one of their 4 actions unlocked. After that, you spend 50 coins to unlock another action, and you get to choose which of the remaining actions you want to unlock. This is not a hierarchy, you don't have to go top to bottom. You can choose whichever of the remaining ones you want to unlock, and you can also spend 50 coin to get rid of one of those bullshit items on your bullshit traits. And that's pretty much it for advancement. It's your spending coin to buy one of the 3 remaining actions, or you're spending your coin to get rid of bullshit. There are no experience points. There are no experience levels. From what I've seen, there's not really a system for improving your defense score or improving your attributes, your physical abilities, your magical abilities, and any of that. It's strictly kept simple to adding actions and removing unwanted traits from the bullshit table. So with all this in mind, let me talk about a few pros and cons from my experience playing it. And again, once more, I am talking about the Mud and Blood edition, which is currently available on the website. After this, I'll share a little bit of a preview of the Curse and Coin edition that is now being kickstarted. But I want to make that distinction clear because some of my cons you'll find are unique to the Mud and Blood edition and are being corrected in the Curse and Coin edition. So first off with pros, I like having a new twist to the team-based solo tabletop dungeon crawling experience. This is an area that I think has been dominated by Forest Darkness, and pretty rightly so. That's a game I very much enjoy. But there is room in the market for more single-player team-based dungeon delving experiences. So I'm glad to see this come in with its marching order mechanic and its bullshit mechanic, and just give us another option. Also, I like that it is very quick and easy. Like, there's no heavy math involved here. If you want to do something, you roll 1d6, you add a static number, you compare it to a target number. If you meet or beat, then you succeed. That's it. It's not a game that's extremely cumbersome. Now, in addition to that, there are a lot of different conditions that can be applied by the different actions. So you may find you're spending a little bit of time going into the appendix of the book to find the right condition and apply it correctly. But as long as you got that bookmarked, is not a major penalty to your table time. This is a game that has few rules, and it does go fairly quick on the table. I also like that each of the individual rogues is very colorful and has unique traits and unique actions and even unique flaws and qualities in their bullshit that are unique to them and really gives you flavor for that character. And, I think some people may disagree. I think it's kind of fun that this game has the doors open so that you have your standard character classes, but you, in addition to those, rogues and fighters and wizards, you also have a cosmic marine that's coming from some other science fiction setting. And the last pro is going to be the bullshit mechanic. I like this concept of having a phase where you roll a die to determine something weird and wacky that somewhat parallels that tabletop RPG experience, where you got the one player who has bad luck and always rolls one. You got that one player who comes up with creative ways for their character to fumble that turns into hilarious moments at the game table. So I think the bullshit mechanic is trying to replicate that kind of moment and that kind of feel, which I applaud, and it can create some fun and interesting moments in your game. But that's also going to be my segue into talking about cons, because the bullshit die it kind of giveth and it kind of taketh away. So this is just part of the joy of dealing with randomly generated results. Yes, the bullshit die sometimes gives you something fun. In my playthrough, the majority of the time, it wasn't so fun. There are far too many, in my opinion, far too many bullshit results that are your party members turning on the rest of the party and attacking them, or a doctor giving them a bad drug that poisons them, or something to that effect. Um, in my first play of the very first dungeon, I'm pretty sure most of the damage inflicted to a barbarian on my team was imposed by the other members of the party. Which, again, RNG, you just never know what you're going to get. This could just be my incredible bad luck. My bad luck that when I generated these rogues and I rolled 1d6 for their flaws, that I was rolling the items that were they turn and stab their fellow characters, their fellow teammates. And it's bad luck that during the bullshit phase that I rolled those, and it's bad luck that I think every single time I rolled one of those and I randomly generated which member of my party was going to be hit, it was the barbarian who has like no defense. He's a glass cannon. Um, so your mileage could very well vary. But for me, there was definitely times where I felt like my party was a bigger threat to itself than a lot of the enemies I fought, especially in the first dungeon that is all like just rat standard, low level fantasy fare. Um, and there were times where there could be a disconnect of immersion, of like, I don't know why they're fighting each other. So my experience with the bullshit mechanic was a little bit rocky, but the good news is, as I mentioned before, part of the advancement process allows you to spend money to remove the traits you don't like on that table. So there is a way to mitigate that. It's just at the beginning of the game you don't have that choice, and so you're going to be stuck with at least one uh, bad trait for each of your rogues at the beginning of each of their careers. The other thing that I think is a con, and I'm just going to say this is a con for me, not something that's inherently wrong or broken with the game, but that is, this is a very low fantasy setting, and as I've mentioned on this channel before, especially when talking about other games such as Ironsworn, I'm not a low fantasy guy. I'm a high fantasy guy. I rather than being a rogue in a sewer fighting rats, and it starts with the rats, but I will say there are more significant challenges that you get to, but they never reach to heights beyond killing goblins and skeletons and that sort of thing. Um, I'm a high fantasy guy. I want to be fighting manticores. I want to be a holy champion. I want to have the giant electrified great sword of doom. And that's not this game. This game is very low fantasy, and your rogues they're mortals. There's a wizard that can do some magic, but it's extremely limited. It doesn't reach the flexibility of some games where I would want to have a massive spell book. It doesn't incorporate gear the way others do. You don't really have a weapon slot and an armor slot and a shield slot and that sort of thing. Your weapon, your armor, if you have a shield, all that's baked into the character itself, and you don't get gear to upgrade. The only gear you get really is just more potions, consumable items, keys, trinkets, stuff along that level, as opposed to upgrading all of your gear the way that you might in a game of Pathfinder or D&D 5th Ed, or even a game like For Against Darkness. Some of this also, I think, led to me feeling that the rogues were a little more disposable than what I'm used to, and part of that I think is their their desire for harming each other made me feel like they were a little bit of disposable assets. The fact that they have price tags assigned to them made me think of them as being disposable assets. The fact that like in the game booklet, when you're making your rogues, it has something to the effect of like there's a spot for you to write their name. If you want to, you don't really have to give them a name. I guess it's good to have something for their tombstone. Again, it just made these rogues feel disposable. Whereas with other games of this type, like again, For Against Darkness, I feel a strong connection to those characters, and they're my party, and I want to keep them all safe and healthy, and I want them all to prosper. And if one of them dies, I feel it. In this game, the rogues just kind of felt disposable, and I didn't really feel that connection to them. But again, I think that's all subjective to my point of view and my opinion and what I look for in games, and not something that's inherently wrong with the game. So, if those of you who like low fantasy, who like things that are grittier, with an odd sense of humor to them, this might be your cup of tea. Um, and so let's talk a little bit about that humor. Um, the humor is always very difficult to pull off, because what one person thinks is hilarious, another person's going to think is stupid. And this game does lean a little more towards obviously the lowbrow of humor. I mean, it's baked right in there with a bullshit mechanic, and things like a condition that's called high as fuck, um, and just in the general way that the fiction is written into the rulebook. There's a barbarian named Bronan instead of Conan, and he worships Crumb instead of Crom. And Crumb could be funny because, crumbs, breadcrumbs, but it's also probably a reference to the publisher, which is called Crumbling Keep Games. Um, Most of the humor I found unoffensive, nothing to worry about. But as I said at the beginning, there is it does embrace a language that's a little saltier than what you're used to finding on this channel. To the game designer's credit, they put it right on Front Street. The books begin with a content warning box that just lays out, like, hey, these are some of the subject matters you're going to find in the book and in the adventures. And if you have a trigger for any of these things, just be aware, this is what you're getting into. And like, that's great. It's better to err on the side of caution and give that kind of advice than not. They don't shy away from the subject matter of some of the things that you'll encounter in these games. I think at the absolute worst of the humor, I just kind of found it cringy. But I also will recognize that I only played this solo. So even though some of the humor I found being cringe inducing as a solo person sitting at my dining table by myself, if I was in a room with three of my friends and, there's a different energy there, and you're cracking jokes and you're laughing over bullshit and all the wacky other conditions and things that come up. I think in a cooperative environment, some of the things that I found cringy about the humor would actually be embraced in a small group, just because the energy is different, the vibe is different than a solo experience. But that is something that is just worth mentioning because your mileage may vary. And my last two cons for the game are things I saved for last because they are both things that only apply to the Mud and Blood edition that we've been looking at so far and have been corrected for the Curse and Coin edition that's currently being kickstarted. The first of those is that there's way too much flipping through pages. So in the Mud and Blood edition that I played, you have your cards lined up in the marching order for the enemies, but those cards do not include all of that enemy's information. You still need to go to a book and find that enemy in the book to see what is his bullshit table, what is his action table, what are the results if I roll 1d6 on those items, what does that enemy do? And if you're fighting all of the same monster, if you're fighting 4 giant rats, that's not a big deal. If you're fighting 4 enemies or 4 different types, then you're spending way too much time flipping through the book to find that particular enemy. This is a game where you are going to want to have a healthy stack of bookmarks to mark the enemies that you're fighting in any given encounter so you can jump right to them. The good news is I've been told in the Curse and Coin edition on Kickstarter right now, they've corrected this so that each of the enemy cards has all their information right on them, and that will eliminate all of that flipping that you do in the Mud and Blood edition. My other major con for the Mud and Blood edition was the lack of a random generator. I like how in like 4 Against Darkness, the core book for 4 Against Darkness comes with a random generator for unlimited play, and if you want prescribed adventures, they offer those as well. Whereas with Marching Order, it's the other way. It doesn't come with a random generator. It only comes with prescribed adventures that you must use. But good news, the Curse and Coin edition. This is my preview copy. This is the one piece of the Curse and Coin edition that I've got a preview copy of. There's several books included in that edition. But this is the Sewers of Rot Bottom, and it is a randomly generated sewer. So if you participate in the Kickstarter, you will get as part of that a random generator that's not included with the Mud and Blood edition. So with all of that covered and the pros and the cons, let's talk about price and availability. So if you want to get the game today and start playing, you're going to need to get the Mud and Blood edition that's available on their website. Currently, they have the PDF version available for $15. So if you want to print out the cards to use as the marching order or use a different means to track that, you could get that and get rolling today. They also have a number of other adventures you can purchase there, and those range in price from $3 to $11 depending on the length of the delve or adventure, and that's for the PDF. Roughly double that if you want to get physical copies of those delves and adventures. Now, if you want to participate in the Kickstarter, I am including a link in that below. I can give you a little bit of a preview information, but you're really going to want to go to the Kickstarter and check out the information they have there to know all about it. Because again, I only have one piece of that Curse and Coin edition, not the entire thing. So in addition to the Sewers of Rot Bottom, which is a randomly generated dungeon system that comes with Curse and Coin, they also are including 4 new, maybe more than that, new rogues that you can use. And these are going to be like basically new classes, like the Assassin and the Necromancer are being included. Also, there's a lot of quality of life improvements in the new edition. Again, they're taking away the need to flip through all the books. All the information is going to be printed directly on the cards. I believe they are including dice right there in the set. And there may be some other items. I think I saw that there's going to be like dry erase elements, and they're elevating the experience not only with these additional physical elements, but also with just cleaning up some of the rules and presentation, basically including errata. It's going to be the latest and most updated set of the rules. And I believe the Kickstarter edition is also going to come with a series of new adventures that are different than those adventures that are included in the Mud and Blood edition. The adventures included in the Curse and Coin edition are all about the different gangs that are found in and around Rock Bottom. And again, I'm going to encourage you to go to the Kickstarter if you want more information about what is included in the Curse and Coin edition and what the cost of the pledge levels are and all that other information. I'll have a link in both the description of this video and the comments below that will take you directly there. So there you have it, a quick breakdown of Marching Order Mud and Blood Edition and a brief preview of the Curse and Coin Edition that's currently being kickstarted to help you decide if this game is worth checking out further. If you have any questions about the game, please leave them in the comments below. Also, if you've already played Marching Order, please share your thoughts about that experience in the comments as well. And as always, I want to take a brief moment to say thank you to everyone who supports me, whether that's by leaving your comments and suggestions, clicking the like button, buying a super thanks, subscribing to the channel, or subscribing to the Patreon. Thank you for everything you do to support me. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.